What we have seen is the coronavirus crisis concertinaing a decade worth of workplace trends into mere weeks. I'm sure that all of you found your reward and well-being programs being pulled front and center at your organization as your leadership tried to support and encourage workers to both cope and adapt month after month to survive the most extreme collective societal disruption since the two world wars. Even before the crisis, many of you were concerned at how hard organizational change was hitting employee well-being. Next week, we will be publishing our annual employee well-being research in association with AXA PPP Healthcare. The survey within this major report was conducted shortly before lockdown, but even then we found that half, or over half, that's 57% of employers, were saying that at their organizations there was a risk to employee well-being. This is a 235% increase on our 2019 research. So it's not surprising that good employers were spurred into rapid action when the crisis hit. Back on the 27th of March this year, on the first Friday of full lockdown, REBA ran our first of our COVID-19 webinar series. Over that and the subsequent 10 webinars, we had 33 leading reward directors on our speaker panels. And I lost count of the number of them who told me they suddenly had access to budgets and funding that they'd fought for years in order to put in place support for the mental, physical, and social well-being of staff. Yesterday, REBA published our June SNAP survey, the fourth in a series, into ways in which the coronavirus crisis is reshaping pay, bonus, and employee benefit decisions. Many of you would have participated in this research last week, so a very big thank you to you. And you can download the full report in the report section of the reba.global website. Broadly, these brand new results show that UK employers have preferred to leave the government to manage things like the COVID-19 testing and contact tracing process, for better or for worse. But most of you now issue employer-supplied face masks to some or all of your staff. This survey also showed big shifts in how employers have been supporting mental well-being during lockdown. As you can see from the slide, most report an increased use of their employee assistance program, while 90% witnessed a spike in the number of employees using their mental well-being app. Sadly, bereavement and trauma counselling has also seen a rise. On the physical well-being side, respondents reported notable jumps in the use of virtual GPs and cycle to work schemes. But going the other way, 2/5 of you reported a decrease in the number of claims that were coming through your group PMI schemes. And I think we're all aware that could well change come the easing and further unlocking of lockdown. Moving on from the huge shifts that we've seen in wellbeing benefits, the other area that's come into sharp focus over the past 4 months is disparities in pay and bonus structures. Cash flows at businesses across the country and no doubt globally have tightened dramatically, either out of immediate need or due to anticipated recession or even depression. And yet we've needed those crucial frontline workers across utilities, retail, healthcare, manufacturing, banking to keep the wheels of society moving. And many of the panelists on our COVID-19 webinar series spoke about doing their best to protect the base pay of these key staff. And in some cases, they've even paid them bonuses or allowances to keep those on lower earnings rewarded in the face of the risks they were taking. But the truth is, huge swathes of employers have implemented or planning to implement pay cuts or delaying pay reviews or deferring bonuses. Our new June COVID-19 SNAP survey does show, however, that maybe things aren't turning out quite as bad as expected. If we look a month ago at our May SNAP survey, almost a quarter of respondents were reviewing whether or not they needed to implement pay cuts. But by June, this had halved. Our new June survey also shows that many employers are still weighing up how to manage annual pay reviews. Already a quarter have opted not to proceed with pay reviews, but a third are still reviewing what to do. We're also seeing slightly more employers cancelling all employee bonuses compared to the number of employers going ahead and paying out bonuses. But there are a lot of employers who are still reviewing this. And 30% of employers are planning to change performance metrics for all staff, including their executives, while a further 1 in 10 will be changing performance metrics for non-executive staff. Looking at executive bonuses, the picture is equally mixed, with around 1 in 8 choosing to proceed with exec bonuses, but over a quarter, so double that number, planning to cancel executive bonuses this year. There has been a slight move in the past month as well towards more employers reducing executive bonuses. In our May SNAP survey, just 1 in 100 respondents announced reductions to bonuses for executives. This has now jumped to almost 1 in 10. And similarly, the percentage announcing delays in paying out executive bonuses has grown from 1 in 20, saying that they would do this, to now 1 in 10 plan to delay executive bonuses. A lot of these decisions are being explored in the context of how executive remuneration looks in our society today, to employees, to customers and clients, to shareholders, yet when there's such a focus on fairness and inclusivity and an awareness that those workers most crucial to keep society going are often the lowest paid. Big director payouts damage brand and trust at a time when, as of this week, 1.1 million employers have accessed the government's coronavirus job retention scheme, which has covered 9.2 million jobs as of the 21st of June. Talking of the furlough scheme, our June SNAP survey shows that more than half of our respondents have used or are still using the furlough scheme. But as the scheme changes from the 1st of July through to October, a quarter of you who are using it say you're going to have to look at making redundancies, and more than half of you are considering making redundancies. And some of you who have used the scheme are saying you might have to make structural changes to working hours to be able to cope in the future. And some are even having to go as far as making structural changes to the business, such as closing down divisions. So in the light of these gloomy forecasts, you can see why responsible, fair, inclusive reward has come into the spotlight in our REBA community and in larger society. Again, during those private rehearsals for the REBA webinars, some employers, panelists got talking among themselves about executive reward, especially given that April and May were key shareholder reporting months. Now, they didn't all agree with each other always, but behind virtual closed doors, many did express a desire to see a more responsible approach to executive pay. A desire for a different approach, really, away from exponential increases for top bosses and more of a greater focus on reward for employees lower down the pecking order who were struggling financially. There are many reward directors out there who believe this and who are interested in this. And hopefully today, during our big conversation, you will discover each other and realize that you're not alone. And if any of you would then like to come back to REBA so we can enable some virtual private discussions, I'd certainly be very open to enabling that. Because now is the time for change. We're in a state of flux. Everything has to be put on the table in order to work out what will get us through this. 2020 really is an opportunity to reframe our world. And we can either be an active part of that reframing, or we can allow ourselves to be swept along by other people's choices and decisions. And that's why today's big conversation among the REBA community is an opportunity within small groups to check your own thinking, to bounce ideas off others, to learn from and connect with fellow reward directors. Of course, solutions are going to be different in each organization, but we can already see that those organizations which are agile, which are creative, who are looking ahead are the ones most likely to thrive in the years to come. And those, both people and organizations who do not change, who want to continue doing things the way that they've always done them, or are waiting for things to return to the way they were, are unlikely to thrive. Events will overcome them. The crisis programs employers put in place during this COVID-19 pandemic have largely been there to support employees in the short term. Which remain, which fall away, will be up to each of you and your employer in the face of belt tightening. But bear in mind that what you do now will probably become your longer term reward and employee benefit strategy. Already we can see from our June SNAP survey that 40% of our respondents have or will be auditing their employee benefits packages for effectiveness and for return on investments. Work for most has changed forever, it's still changing. So this is our opportunity as reward, as benefits, as HR teams to redesign work. Take on that leadership role. You don't need the job title and the position. Anybody in an organization can be a leader if you're innovative and creative enough, and you can show a direction of travel. Because we need to move away from a state where work damages physical, mental, social, and financial well-being, and to radically rethink the role of fairness and well-being in the workplace. The pandemic has shifted the dial in a positive direction in some ways. Let's not let that slip away. Figures released by the Office of National Statistics last Friday showed that by mid-June, 49% of working adults said they were working from home. Working from home has spurred on the humanization and social well-being of the workplace. Many of you probably now know the names of your boss's pets. You can probably recognize your teammates' children by sight. You know who lives alone. You know who is caring for vulnerable or elderly relatives. And who hasn't had a cheeky toddler join in a work video meeting? We've all seen into the living rooms, the kitchens, even the bedrooms, not only of our own colleagues, but also those that we do business with. We've become real and whole people to each other, with increasingly casual dress and stranger hairstyles, or unstyles, if you will. Right this moment, bald men must be feeling so smug. The use of social media apps, online classes, team activities, CEO videos, and a variety of company communications has shot up dramatically. But to humanize the workplace is to acknowledge the differences between us all and be inclusive and fair to all. The COVID-19 crisis has already been shown to have unpicked some of the improvements in equality in the workplace that have been hard won over decades. Women, ethnic minority groups, the disabled, the socioeconomically disabled, both the youngest and oldest workers have been the most impacted by the job losses, coronavirus itself, and the need to stay home for the care or shielding reasons. Employers did not have to report on gender pay gaps this year, although thankfully a number of employers who truly care about gender pay equality did so on a voluntary basis. Ethnicity pay reporting is still not being legislated for, despite the consultation on it having closed over a year ago. The death of George Floyd, the rise of Black Lives Matter movement, and the increasing pressure on employers to act on ethnic inequality in the workplace has caused those in reward to shuffle uncomfortably. We in reward do need to do some soul searching on this and not use the excuse that the data is too complicated. Of course, the data is going to be hugely complicated. Life is hugely complicated. but that cannot be an excuse when the result is inequality and discrimination on the basis of ethnicity. Wellbeing strategies such as those supporting those in caring roles, good financial well-being, equal pay for all, have a crucial role to play to mitigating growing unfairness in our society. Given the vital role that well-being should play in reshaping the work and jobs and inclusivity and the future sustainability of businesses, it's not surprising that measuring the effectiveness of well-being is receiving a greater focus. In this year's employee well-being research, we see that as many as 92% of respondents are now using management information to gauge the success of their well-being practices. This is 24% more companies doing this compared to a year ago. However, most of the measures being used are still proxy figures such as absence rates and participation levels, rather than attempts to see real shifts at a strategic business level. In time, I really hope that we'll see more measurement focus on things like how secure employees feel in their jobs, which will be linked to business sustainability, whether they feel a sense of purpose in their work, again, linked to whether that company, their employer, has a sense of purpose. Are employees able to connect to each other? Do they feel that they are paid fairly and that they are included in the organization? Do they feel that their employer is a good citizen within our world who exercises kindness both to employees and to society as a whole? We are starting to see customer satisfaction and good business outcomes coming into some of the measures being put in place by those forward-thinking employers who've put in good well-being strategies. Risks also need to be measured and assessed more often, such as the damage to employer brand if employer is shown to have a lack of compassion towards its employees. Long term, that does have an impact on business sustainability, as does the risks due to non-communicable diseases or mental stress, for example. To be sustainable, an organization needs to be innovative and resilient, and that will only happen with a good culture and a good, resilient employee experience. The rewarded employee benefits community is absolutely central to achieving this, and that is my challenge to you today.